Welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive.
Always. What do we have today?
Today, things get pretty dark. We're heading to Los Angeles, Little Armenia neighborhood to be exact.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
It's the case of Alberd Tersargyan.
I'm not familiar.
Yeah, well, he seemed like an average guy just living his life, but there's a lot more to this story.
Okay, I'm listening.
We're talking like obsession, violence.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and murder, too.
So how are we piecing this all together?
Well, luckily there's a pretty detailed Wikipedia article about Tersargyan. It gives us a glimpse into his double life, you know?
A double life, huh? Always makes for an interesting deep dive.
Definitely. What strikes me is how, like, normal he seemed on the surface. He came to the U.S. from Armenia in 2001,
Okay.
got a job at a cabinet-making plant. Seemed pretty ordinary.
Yeah, it sounds like he was trying to blend in, start fresh.
Exactly. But get this, he claimed to have been a, like, quote, professional killer in Armenia. Like, what?
Whoa, hold on. A professional killer.
Yeah.
That changes things a bit.
Right. Like, was he serious? Was it just some weird bragging? I mean, we don't know much about his past.
Yeah, that's a pretty big red flag. I mean, think about it. You come to a new country, you're trying to build a new life, but you're carrying this dark secret.
It's almost like he couldn't escape his past.
Maybe he felt the need to, boast. Like he had to project this image of power and danger.
Yeah, to make himself seem, I don't know, more intimidating.
Or, and this is the part that's really unsettling, maybe he wasn't lying.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I didn't even want to consider that.
I know, but you got to think about all the possibilities. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, so we have this mysterious guy with a potentially violent past.
Yeah.
And the story gets even crazier. Around 2003, he befriends another Armenian family, the Safarians.
Right. It's fair.
They vacation together. They seem close, normal family stuff.
Everything seems fine on the surface.
Exactly. But then Tersargyan starts to, how should I put this? He becomes fixated on Karine Hakobian, Kajik Safarian's wife.
Creed. Yeah, this is where it takes a really dark turn.
This isn't just a little crush or anything. He's like obsessed. Even though Karine keeps rejecting him, he just won't let it go.
You know, I was reading that he, like, stalked her and stuff.
Oh, wow. Seriously?
Yeah, and even tried to break up her marriage by telling her about her husband's infidelity.
Like intentionally trying to sabotage their relationship.
Yeah, it's like watching someone spiral out of control, you know?
Totally. And then something truly awful happens.
Mhm.
In December 2008, the Safarian's 12-year-old daughter comes home.
Oh, this is the part I was dreading.
Yeah, and she finds her father and younger sister dead, both shot in the head.
Can you imagine? It's just heartbreaking.
Unthinkable. Absolutely horrific.
I can't even begin to fathom the trauma that poor girl went through.
Yeah, and all this time, Tersargyan, he just, blends in.
Like a chameleon, adapting to the situation.
He's questioned by the police, but just as a witness. Nobody suspects him of anything.
But he must have been a wreck inside, right? Like, hiding these intense feelings for Karine while knowing about the murders.
It's insane. Talk about compartmentalizing, leading a double life.
It's truly frightening.
But the story, well, the violence doesn't end there.
I was afraid you were going to say that.
Yeah, in February 2010, a prostitute, Julie Cates, is murdered.
This part always confused me a little.
Yeah, it seems random at first. She was shot in broad daylight, right from a van.
The article mentioned that it might have even been a silenced rifle. Chilling.
Wow. And the client accused her of stealing from him.
Yeah, but like, is there any connection to Tersargyan, or is this totally separate?
It's a good question. I'm sure the investigators were considering all angles at this point. I mean, the brutality of the crime, the fact that a gun was used.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely raises red flags.
Yeah.
But at this point, the pieces aren't really fitting together.
Exactly. Then, just a month later, in March 2010, Karine Hakobian is murdered. Shot in the head while she was in her car, parked near her apartment.
That's when things really start to unravel, right?
Absolutely. Now, you have 3 murders, all with firearms, and Tersargyan has a clear connection to one of the victims and possible motives for the others.
Right. But to actually nail him, they need hard evidence.
Evidence that, luckily, comes from a pretty unexpected source.
Yeah, one of Tersargyan's colleagues noticed him acting, like, really strange, and he was carrying a gun.
Oh, wow, so he reported it.
He did. He told an Armenian-American police officer in Glendale about it, and thankfully, that officer was able to connect the dots and realize this could be linked to the murders in L.A.
That's a perfect example of how important community policing is.
Totally. If that officer hadn't understood the cultural nuances, who knows what would have happened?
Yeah, Tersargyan might have slipped through the cracks.
It's crazy how one small thing can make all the difference.
Absolutely. So they arrest Tersargyan in April 2010 for, like, weapons violations.
Yeah.
They search his place and find a bunch of unregistered handguns and rifles.
Whoa, like a whole arsenal.
Yeah. And then comes the moment of truth.
Alberd.
Ballistics testing.
This is where the science really comes in, right?
Exactly. Think of it like fingerprinting for guns. Every gun leaves unique markings on the bullets and shell casings.
So they can match them up.
Yeah, they compare the bullets and casings from the crime scenes with the ones fired from Tersargyan's guns. It's super precise.
And that's how they got him.
Yep. They linked a small caliber handgun they found in his stash to Karine Hakobian's murder.
So, case closed.
Well, not so fast. There's a lot more to unpack here.
Like what?
Well, they eventually charged him with all 4 murders. The ballistic evidence connected him to the Safarian family murders and the Julie Cates case, too.
Wow, so we're dealing with a potential serial killer.
And because of the multiple murders, he's eligible for the death penalty.
That's intense. So what happened next? Did they go straight to trial?
It was actually more complicated than that. The judge made a really unusual decision.
Okay, now I'm really curious.
Yeah, you see, the judge decided to ban the publication of any photos of Tersargyan.
Wait, why would they do that?
The idea was to prevent any potential prejudice against him during the trial.
Huh. So they thought seeing his face would make people think he was guilty.
Right, that it could influence the jury.
That makes sense, but it also seems like it could be suppressing information.
Exactly. This sparked a huge debate about press freedom and the public's right to know.
Yeah, I can see both sides of that argument.
The Reporters Committee for Freedom of the Press actually challenged the ruling.
Interesting. Did they win?
Well, that's not entirely clear from the Wikipedia article. There's, like, a gap in the information.
Ugh, those are the worst. Always leaves you hanging.
Right. And then, right in the middle of all this legal back and forth, Tersargyan pleads not guilty to Karine Hakobian's murder.
He pleaded not guilty after all that.
Yeah, in 2014. It was shaping up to be a long and complicated trial.
But then something crazy happened.
Something nobody saw coming.
Oh man, I hate cliffhangers. You're killing me here.
Don't worry, we'll dive into all the details right after the break. So 2018 rolls around. Tersargyan's in jail, waiting for his trial. Yeah. And he takes his own life.
Oh wow. I did not see that coming.
It was in his cell at the men's central jail. Just ended it all.
That's heavy. The Wikipedia article mentions something about Alzheimer's.
Yeah, he had been diagnosed with it, and apparently he'd been showing signs of being suicidal.
It makes you wonder, did he do it to avoid facing a trial? You know, to escape punishment?
Could be. It's like he wanted to control the narrative even in death.
Yeah, to have the last word.
It definitely leaves us with more questions than answers.
Like, why? Why did he do all of this in the first place? Was he just that obsessed with Karine?
Well, obsession definitely played a role. It's like he couldn't handle rejection, so it turned into this need for control, you know?
Yeah, but control to the point of murder. That's a big leap.
Right, but think about it. He eliminates anyone he sees as an obstacle. Karine's husband, her children. It's a pattern we see a lot in stalking and domestic violence cases.
Yeah, that makes sense. But then there's Julie Cates, the prostitute who was killed.
Right, that one's the outlier. Doesn't really fit the same mold.
It almost feels random compared to the other killings.
Some people might say it was a crime of opportunity, maybe driven by anger or a need for power.
But it could also be that there's something we're missing, some piece of information that connects it all.
That's the frustrating thing about this case. There are so many unknowns.
It's like trying to solve a puzzle with half the pieces missing.
Exactly. But even with the pieces we do have, I think there are some important takeaways.
Yeah, like what can we learn from all of this?
Well, for me, it really highlights the importance of recognizing those red flags, you know?
Red flags like what?
Like, think about Tersargyan. He was bragging about being a hitman, manipulating the Safarians, becoming increasingly obsessed with Karine. There were signs there, but no one really put them all together.
So are you saying we should be suspicious of everyone, like constantly looking for the worst in people?
No, not at all. It's about finding that balance, you know?
Yeah.
Most people are good, but it's important to trust your gut instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is.
It's like that saying, better safe than sorry.
Exactly. Be aware, but don't let fear control your life.
That's good advice. And I think this case also shows us just how complex the human mind can be.
Totally. We like to put people into boxes, good or bad, but it's rarely that simple.
Like Tersargyan, he was a husband, a co-worker, seemingly normal, and yet he was capable of such terrible things.
It's a reminder that evil can hide in plain sight. It doesn't always announce itself.
Yeah, that's a chilling thought. You never really know what's going on inside someone's head.
And that's why it's so important to be informed, to understand how abusive and manipulative behaviors work.
Knowledge is power, right? The more we know, the better we can protect ourselves.
Exactly. So as we wrap up our deep dive into Alberd Tersargyan, I'm curious, what sticks with you the most?
That's a good question. For me, it's that double life thing. Like he was a husband, a coworker, a neighbor, just blending in. But then underneath this capacity for violence.
Yeah, it's unsettling, right? Makes you wonder who you can really trust.
Exactly. Like, are we all just judging people based on, I don't know, surface interactions?
It's like we only see a tiny part of who someone really is, right?
Yeah.
The rest is hidden.
Like an iceberg, just the tip showing.
Exactly. And this case really forces us to think about that. How much can we ever really know about someone?
Yeah, but at the same time, we can't just walk around being suspicious of everyone.
No, of course not. You got to find that balance, right? Be aware, but don't let it turn into paranoia.
Easier said than done sometimes.
True. But you also got to remember, these kinds of cases, they are rare, statistically speaking.
That's a good point. It's easy to get caught up in the darkness of it all.
Yeah, but there's also hope and resilience. We can learn from this.
Like, think about the Safarian family's daughter, the one who survived. She went through something unimaginable, but she's still here.
That's strength right there. The human spirit is incredible.
It makes you wonder, though, what about the wider impact, like on the Armenian community in LA?
Oh, yeah. I'm sure this had a ripple effect.
Did it make people more fearful, less trusting?
It's hard to say for sure, but I imagine it did shake things up a bit.
Yeah.
Suddenly your community doesn't feel as safe.
Makes you realize that even among people you can't let your guard down completely.
Unfortunately, that's the truth.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Alberd Tersargyan, what are your final thoughts? What should we take away from all this?
Well, I think the biggest thing for me is be aware. Pay attention to those red flags. Trust your gut.
I agree. And don't dismiss your feelings, even if they seem small.
Yeah, like if something feels off, it probably is. Don't ignore it.
We also got to remember, though, that hope exists even in the face of darkness. We can learn from this, support each other, and work to prevent these kinds of tragedies.
Well said. This has been a heavy one, that's for sure.
Intense, but important, I think.
Definitely. It makes you think about all the hidden depths out there in ourselves and others.
Yeah, the good, the bad, and everything in between.
Well, everyone, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Alberd Tersargyan. It's a story that'll stay with me, that's for sure.
Me too. And hopefully it'll encourage you to keep questioning, keep learning, and keep diving deep.
We'll be back soon with another fascinating story to explore. Until then, stay curious and stay safe out there.